My name is Charlie Smith, and I'm the editor of Pancouver. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by one of Vancouver's more prolific and accomplished interdisciplinary artists and educators. Sammy Chien is the co-founder and co-artistic director of Chimerik, and he's also been a guest lecturer at several post-secondary institutions. Sammy's also a queer immigrant from Taiwan who's completed more than 500 collaborative projects. Sammy's work has been exhibited in Centre Pompidou in Paris and the National Center for the Performing Arts in Beijing. Chimerik's mission includes fostering intercultural and transnational collaborations, and it does this through new media, digital technology, performance, and other things. And along the way, there have been many honors: the Chrystal Dance Prize, the BC Museum Association Changemaker Award, some Jessie Richardson Awards. And thanks for speaking with me, Sammy. It's just a joy to have you here.
Thank you too, Charlie. It's what a pleasure to be able to speak with you too.
And
Thank you for having me.
maybe you've done so many things with so many different people. How would you describe your artistic practice?
Wow. Yes, that's a good question. I would say I've been kind of describing myself as an interdisciplinary artist. And then we tend to expand that by saying, artist, creator, director, researcher, mentor, and beyond as well. We also produce work as well. We're starting producing emerging artist work as well in our company. And we also do spiritual work as well. So it's like integrating technology and spiritual practice and intercultural work. So it's all of that and beyond. It's hard to put things into words when you're working in an expansive kind of field. But it's always fun to attempt to describe what that is in words, Yeah.
Words don't always do the trick. And what led you to become an artist?
Wow, good question. I think I feel really lucky that my dad is an art educator. He's a visual artist and painter. And he's been advocating and doing lots of research around right brain spatial thinking at a young age. So then I grew up in a more creative kind of environment, I would say. And then, so and my mom was a music teacher as well. So yeah, I feel really lucky that both my parents were quite encouraged me to do what I want to do. And because I have an older brother, so he kind of gets more of the pressure. And my parents kind of gave up on me when I was young. They just kind of let me, they were like, okay, if you get into a community college, we'll be so happy. So, just be totally fine with whatever you want to do. And I didn't even get into a community college, which was hilarious. So I keep finding my way to creative to figure out my life path. And then it's been quite an amazing journey actually so far to find arts as a tool for me to transmit and deliver an experience, a journey, and some of the messages and values I attempt to actually encode them, embed them into the work itself. Yeah.
And in which area of Taiwan did you grow up in?
Kind of boring. I grew up in Taipei.
Okay.
But I'm in love with other cities like Tainan, Taidong. Like those are where my heart is at in Taiwan more. Yeah.
Yeah. And because the South is often are very artistic and creative and all sorts of rebellious. But maybe I'll ask you, what were you setting out to do when you co-founded Chimerik? Like, what were your objectives and what were you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the beginning, I'm talking about like early mid 2000s, so like 2004, 2005. This is when I started to really, I think, investing and committing to the arts more, and then finding a tool, finding a language, finding something that can transmit this artistic expression. And then, so I was quite invested into film. That was one of the practice I field at luckily, like my dad had left a camera in my room, like intentionally when I was a kid. And then, so I was able to play with different way to make claymation, experimental film without knowing what they were. So it came naturally at a young age. And then I wanted to figure out ways for me and for other artists to intuitively create. So there is so much hoops and challenges and barrier for artistic expression because of technology, because of the language of each art form. It can be daunting for a lot of people and can be discouraging in a lot of ways. Imagine you want to be a maestro, to be the best piano player, then think about how long that journey would be for you to get there. So, but sometimes you have a very simple idea you want to share with the audience. So then around 2008, when I encountered Troca Ranch, this is one of the digital performance pioneer in the world. They were based in New York City, and now they are in Berlin. So they made this software called Isadora, and which is a technology that's very accessible for anyone without programming language, a computer background, to be able to dive into as an artist, to create, to bridge different language, sound, video, movement, lights, and interactivity into one. So it kind of open out this new portal for me to connect different interdisciplinarity of the people from different fields, different languages come together in a common ground. And I just felt like I'm starting to see a monster with a new body, with limbs that are connecting in different ways. And then this idea of like the chimera or chimera or chimera, it's like people pronounce it differently, which I love. It's like embracing ambiguity in these undefined spaces. For something new to happen and giving permission, empowerment for new innovation to happen. So that's why it's called Chimerik as an idea of becoming.
No, I figured that it was related to the term. Now, why was it important for you? You're in Vancouver, to maintain a secondary base in Taipei in those early days.
Oh, yeah. So it happened naturally, actually, for me. My grandfather passed away in 2009. So it gave me invitation to come back coming back to my homeland again. And then it was a very wild journey, actually, in being back and going through grief and, revisiting a lot of families. I got connected with one of a really top underground DJ in Taiwan. And then Jazz, their group was called KBN, Kai. So then they had a lot of project and connection. It kind of like blossomed and just blew off from there, exploded. So I was DJing in this legendary bar called Cao Chang. And then there was all people, like I'm meeting with people like Zhang Zhen, who was in the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, who won Kawaii movies, and a film producer were all there. And lots of celebrities in Taiwan were in that bar, and some of them owned the bar as well. So I got to meet lots of really interesting filmmaker, artists, and producers. And then from there onwards, I started to branch out my connection in Taiwan, doing lots of interesting events and in the visual art world. And I kind of delved into the scene, and it was so enriching and really diverse and really beautiful. And I did curate a show there, underground show in the new space that the open the open contemporary art center was just going into this new really expanded space. So we did an interdisciplinary kind of collaboration there. So then I got connected really a lot in people in Taipei, and it was so exciting. Lots of things were happening, and you were able to do something that in Canada would have taken years to get to, and then we were doing in a few months, like some big shows in. There was one project we did in Taichung where we built a stage on the lake, and then project balloon, like project mapping to large balloons, and then like lighting the buildings, and it was a government project with.
I was reading about it. There were 30,000 balloons or something.
Oh, there were 30,000 people with balloons.
30,000 people. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but with little balloons, yeah. And they had the little balloons that were lighting up, so that the whole scene was just like an ocean people with lights, yeah. And I was grateful to really do some different in Taiwan. There were different funding sources and different kind of vision that was quite progressive. So that I got connected there and doing lots of interesting work. And then I still go back to do projects whenever there is a good alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. And in those days, Vancouver's art scene, it was much more kind of parochial and Western oriented. I'm just wondering, you're advancing interculturalism international collaborations, and I'm wondering what obstacles you had to overcome, kind of to get people thinking along those lines.
Yeah, interesting. In the beginning, I think the much earlier days. I'm talking about when I was in high school. When I was I think about 18. I was very much because I grew up in Nova Scotia actually. I spent time in Nova Scotia. Well, that was the first place in Canada I moved to. There was mostly like there's not a lot of people that look like me, right?
Mhm.
There's a very little population of people of color. And then I faced a lot of racism when I was younger into my teenage life. And then so a lot of my work was respond to the status quo of the political social climate of racism. And at a young age. So I started making film that was respond to anti-racism work. And then when I dive into the kind of Chimerik realm, in the beginning, I really want to shift away from the politics so much and then dive into more just the pure art making, the joy of collaboration and storytelling. And then I think after that, I start to revisit those political and social messages again and values. That's when it became challenging. Is that I think I had to represent I carry a lot more baggage, I would say. There is a lot of projection and generalization and stereotypes of what a certain race or culture that would look like. And then we're doing work that were kind of like, I would say, eliciting, provoking those questions as well. And of course, you get certain pushback from either reviewers, critic, or just from general audience that were not ready to see or hear this kind of topic discussion. Yeah. So I would say generally, I would think it's quite positive. I think the challenge that came through made me question, made me stronger of who I am today, the kind of work I want to focus on. At the same time, the pushback was like quite hard and there was lots of barriers and you have to really spend a lot of labor convincing people of certain perspective and knowledge, to share. Yeah.
Well, maybe you were just ahead of your time, and now people are coming around to what you knew 10 years ago. I'm also curious how Chimeric's projects evolved over the years, and how you went. You've done many things, but was there kind of an evolution or an arc to what you were doing?
Yes, definitely. Well, you have fantastic question, I gotta say. It's really inspiring how you ask question. Wow, you're so experienced. Because I do want to talk about that because this we all come through journey while humans, right? And then there's times you have an idea, you learn, and you struggle, and then you kind of rise above, you break through, and that's not the end all. Then there's another struggle, there's another breakthrough. We went through multiple phases of that. And I would say, especially during COVID, during the pandemic, there was a huge kind of breakthrough that happened, artistically, politically, spiritually. Um, right now, I'm co-running Chimerik with my partner. Her name is Caroline McCall. She's a white female, queer female. And we were talking about how to come together. We fell in love and trying to figure out what that conversation is like, being different gender, race, culture, being West and Eastern from different sides of the world. And there's a lot of anger and misunderstanding between the East and the West, or white and people of color. There's so much division, the right and left. So we come together, and then we work through all that misunderstanding as much as we can, and that's a stereotype and generalizations about each other. And her mom's side family is from British as well, right? So some people would just like, that's the main, one of the source of colonizer, da, 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 da. So working through those anger and trauma really help us to be in a place where we can talk about what is the next step, what is the deeper connection between human beings. Why are we on earth in this time together having this kind of conversation? Why do we make art to spark those conversation, ideas? One of the best things is that we are both spiritual. I've been working with a spiritual teacher, Buddhist teacher for many, many years. He's the one that has been advising and guiding me through all the steps from the early stage of like being creative, and kind of embracing a bounded mindset, kind of shifting slowly away from anger and some of the activism thing that hasn't bring in the great impact I actually intend to have those greater result, and find different way to create impact to the people. And Caroline, I kind of align on that level. And now our work is, we're going to a different kind of dimension in our work now. We're trying to really foster creative conversation, opening new doors and open new spaces for people to rethink and reflect on what does it mean, to be here, to be together, to be human, to have this deeper experience together. And what are our purpose as soul coming on earth in this lifetime, on this earth time, to what do we share together? What do we want to leave, before in this world, in this lifetime? So I think now our work has transformed into more mediumship practice, spiritual practice, more ritual work, still integrating technology and using technology as a way to facilitate ways of transmission, transmit the vibration, and also holding a really inviting space for the audience to be, I think, to feel excited, to be curious, and then not feel ever being preached at. And then invite the audience to just naturally evoke and elicit those potentials, I think, for new ways to engage with people. And that's kind of one of our goal right now in our company. Yeah.
That's interesting because it sounds like this leads into the mentorship that you're doing, and whether it's speaking to students or having the interns or offering workshops. And I'm wondering, when you go into a classroom, whether maybe it's different for different age groups, but let's say high school students or even graduate students who you've spoken to, what are you hoping to convey? Or do you kind of walk in with a mindset or a philosophy or an approach?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I would say I try not to prescribe what the experience or the philosophy would be, because it tend to feel more preachy if I walk into a space with a certain preconceived ideas. And as a student, I wouldn't want the lecturer or the mentor to also bring that into the space without getting to know me, right? So I try to approach it on more individual basis and case by case. I try to be open-minded when I walk into that space, knowing that I have already this solid kind of a foundation around me and the research I've done, and I'm ready to open whichever part of the world of me to share them with my most sincere honesty, as much as I can, to be useful in that space. So I would try to just work on myself being present and being in tune with my intuition. And so I can actually be in this place where I have higher guidance from the higher realm as well. We talk about artists in the flow state is like the highest intuition is functioning, right? So it's kind of like that kind of state. A state of quality when I want to be in, even with the students I work with doing workshops, and then I will see and feel what the space feels like, and then try to transform the way that feels, that will inspire them. It feels that will give them something new, that feel that maybe that's something that's actually what they wanted, instead of giving them the same stuff over and over again. And we have done that recently in Taiwan. There's an architecture school that I hired myself and my partner Caroline to teach. And then we have no architectural background, right? But they were interested in how we use art making in theater, dance, and live art kind of format, and how does that translate to architects who want to understand spatial design. So then we then kind of enter with idea of how do we read vibrations that's beyond language, beyond culture, beyond politics, and just be able to be with that space, understanding the history of it and feeling that vibration. Then you can make some decision. It's almost like an embodied practice, somatic practice, by feeling the space and making decision for that space through, complex wisdoms and intuition. And that really changes the way I think architecture student, how they think about how would they design space. Is not just going through the formula, but actually going through intuition, understanding with respect, and how much impact you can create to the surrounding. Yeah, so that's kind of one way I will approach, and I will continue to innovate and follow whatever how it unfolds. Yeah, and that's a joy for teaching too, right?
Yeah, interesting. I'm also, it makes me wonder about the projects that you've done, and you've really kind of arrived at a place where you're trying to be almost connected to your environment and the people around you and what people are thinking about or feeling. And I'm
Yes.
wondering with your art, if there are any projects where you feel you've really, this is an example of how this manifests itself in a project.
Yes, definitely. I think the project is kind of the excuse to actually do the real work itself, you know. Then you have permission to say, oh, this is art, but it's actually transformative way for audience to for people to experience, have a ripple effect of some sort that raise the vibration, brings a greater good, you know. So we have this project called Inner Sublimity. We just tour in Venice, in Italy, and Tuscany, Poggibonsi right by Siena, and also in Lavia. It's about the deep ritual practice that we bring on stage. And then we also work with mediumship. So actually do real spiritual channeling, energetic channeling with spirits in that space. And then through technology to create this kind of a ritualistic kind of architecture through projection and light. And we go through a journey and let audience to experience something that might have, some people say that they felt like they're going through a deep meditation without any guided voice, you know, and that there is certain things gets cleared up, or there's certain new connection that's been made, and then or certain things that start to question on, you know. So this is kind of work we like to do, is for audience to have a new perspective and go through something, have a deeper experience or something that they can take home with and continue to grow and develop further with themselves. Yeah.
That's interesting. Um, we're interviewing you, Sammy, as a project we're calling Beyond Chinese. And and Chinese, it's a term that means many things to many people. Some might think of it as a language or an ethnicity or a racial categorization or a nationality. I'm wondering if there are any misconceptions about this word Chinese that you would like to address, or
Yes.
even when you hear that word, what you think of or feel.
Yeah, I think the word Chinese is very complicated. It's overgeneralized, I would say. I wish there were better words that can replace these words. And I think there are lots of people, different community are actively trying to update words that can be used in different ways, that instead of using Chinese as well. And I would
Yeah,
prefer,
I've heard, for example, the word sinophone to
yeah,
describe somebody who speaks a Chinese language, because there are like
right.
a number of Chinese languages. So,
That's a great one. Yeah, and then I would preface by saying that, you know, there is a lot. The complexity, I think, goes by the history in Taiwan and between Taiwan and China, and the Chinese history itself, the history that happened in China, and that's pre-communism, I think. It's more like Europe, where there's a bunch of kingdoms, right? And then people, well, while living post, you know, communism time, modern time, where there is a lot of, I think, demonization and generalization against China as a country that's ruled by the Communist Party right now, government, you know. And there, I think then there is a tension between the West and the East in that way, and that a lot of misunderstanding and misrepresentation or projection of people in the Western world towards East Asian people by generalizing them as Chinese, meaning that they are from China in the country that is ruled by the Communist Party of China, right? So those are the kind of inaccurate thing that can happen, which can cause a lot of misunderstanding and tension between lots of different, you know, regions and demographic of people. Um, and I'll also preface that by saying this, I'm not anti like mainland Chinese in any way, you know, that is, there is a lot of misunderstanding between, you know, countries and histories and all that stuff. I'm not here to promote any hate between any culture, any religion, any country themselves. It's really here for clarity, and then also it's like I think to raise awareness for the people who are living you know, in diaspora outside their home country, how they might be misperceived. And it's a lived experience, right, that we go through as people with this like lineage that might be Chinese lineage, So right now, especially we just finished a show actually called Salesmen for China. It's based on the true story of Arthur Miller's play.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. That's at Stratford, right?
Yes, at Stratford Festival.
Giovanni Sai directing. Yeah.
Wow, you did a lot of work. That's amazing. So this play was a perfect example of what we're talking about, this dialogue of complexity of different different group that are Chinese speaking groups, right? Our cast are people from Singapore, people from Hong Kong.
Yeah. Giovanni himself is from Manila. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Philippines with the Chinese descent, right? So
Yes.
we're very trying to be very aware what the kind of audience we're reaching out to. Some people would say, "Oh, thank you for advocating for the Chinese community, and the Chinese people, Chinese audience," and then that becomes complicated, right? It's like, oh no, we're gonna need to be specific about we are advocating and serving, and pushing, uplifting the Chinese speaking community, people who speak Chinese, but they may not be necessarily, identified as coming from the country of China, right? Not within the passport of China, right? So especially people from Singapore and Taiwan and Hong Kong is a very complicated topic, right?
And then there's Malaysia too. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So because of the complexity of that, I wish that there's more words than Chinese that just being kind of tossed around, used very much. Because we don't really have that word, because the word 中国 just means the center of the world, right? So the center of the country. And we use the word 华裔, Hua, it's like coming from the 中华民国. So that lineage also is not connected to Communist Party of China or China in the way of how Western look at politics. So those are things I like to clarify.
Yeah. Well, like in the Cantonese, they have the Lo Wah Q, which is the overseas. Now you're Taiwanese, and Taiwan is an interesting place in that it's had waves of colonization and 50 years of the Japanese, and you had Dutch and Spanish and Ming and Qing Dynasty and all of that stuff. I'm wondering how your Taiwanese identity might inform your work as an artist.
Wow. Yes. I didn't realize, and such a good question. I really didn't realize until much later. I in the beginning, I really thought, in the beginning, early stage of my artist career, I thought it was impeding on my process. It was doing me disadvantage to my career because of the lack, I would say because of a lack of permission to even exist, that people don't understand where you come from. They can't really put you in any kind of category. In the Olympics, you can say Taiwan, that kind of like a lot of my Taiwanese friends, when they go abroad, there's a lot of disadvantage because they want to represent the country Taiwan, but at the same time, they felt there's too much risk for any organization outside, of China to even accommodate the word Taiwan, right? So then, because the fear and also not being able to take risks, a lot of artists had to basically exit from competition, from festival, and to just be turned down, right? Because the risk they're taking. So in the beginning, I really thought it's a disadvantage, and that I had to spend so much time explaining myself, the history of Taiwan, what that is, and the language, how I have to say, hey, it's like kind of calling calling Mexican people Spanish people, or you Canadian
Also,
British.
I'm wondering too if you speak Taiwanese or even any of the indigenous languages of Taiwan.
That's really good. I am sad to say that because of the KMT, the Kuomintang, I'm also one of the victims of many people who, I would say the process of erasure really happened during the 228, right? So in people in Taipei, like myself, growing up, we were told that speaking Taiwanese is low class. It's uneducated language. Try not to speak that. People will look down on you. My parents are fluent in Taiwanese, but they will try to speak Mandarin to look proper, to look educated. So because of that, I was discouraged from learning Taiwanese. I have to speak it with my grandma every now and then because she can only speak Japanese and Taiwanese.
Yeah.
Right? So then I would try a bit of both here and there to mix it up to try to talk to her. But other than that, I really lost it at a young age to speak Taiwanese. I lost my chance because of the erasure that happened. But now I really want to relearn it. And I'm fluent in Mandarin, Taiwanese Mandarin. It's like,
Yeah,
if I may call
I
it
guessed as much. The other thing, for someone born in Taiwan, I'm wondering, and you participated in the Sunflower Student Movement, but to see the Sunflower Student Movement and the legalization of same-sex marriage, I'm just wondering what it's been like for you to see these fairly monumental events unfolding in your lifetime, at
yeah.
times when you've been there.
Yeah, it was definitely like one of the kind, very memorable kind of process. It made me question, definitely, and learn about a lot of things. I did actually make a video essay about the whole experience in Sunflower movement connect to my art. I would love to send it to you if you're ever interested. But
And
ultimately,
for anyone who's watching, I should let people know the Sunflower Movement was a student movement in 2014. It paralleled the Umbrella Movement in Hong Kong, but in the Sunflower Movement, they occupied the legislature and then eventually went into the president's office, I believe, and it really galvanized the public. And there was a great deal of public sympathy toward the students. Did I do an accurate description?
really good. So can I clarify a couple parts?
Yeah, of
My
course.
experience from the inside. So it actually seeded the umbrella movement. This is, I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
6 months.
So the Umbrella Movement was inspired by the Sunflower Movement, do you think?
Yeah, because we actually saw a lot of people from Hong Kong like came through, and then they were kind of saying like, Taiwan, you have to hold on to democracy. We're gonna learn from you, and we're gonna take something from here that's so inspiring back to Hong Kong. So we did see a lot of people from Hong Kong being there in real time, trying to understand, witness what's going on. And then I think half a year later or so, like there was an umbrella movement that similar strategy. But one of the big differences is that there were very little violence that happened between the two movements. I know the media portray and exaggerate so much of the violence that happened. But in the inside, actually, it was a very peaceful protest, and it was very highly educational. It was almost utopian in a way of they were counseling sessions, therapy sessions. There were like social workers. There were just professors doing free poetry and education classes. There were free performance in many, many locations, including inside the parliament building itself. There were all installations everywhere, and there were places you can camp. And sometimes when I am out late, I would go actually just sleep there and experience, like hang out with people there. And it was really peaceful. And I think what they want to do is make sure that, to keep everything very organized and actually proper, and to actually show that what they're requesting is actually not to create chaos, right? It's actually something that people want to bring education to, even to the to the mass, actually, that is outside the control of media. And they really don't want media to become controlled by the Chinese government. And that was one of the biggest requests and ask from the government, is to make sure keep Taiwan as democratic as it can be, still have free media, and then not have backdoor kind of exchange with beneath the public eye. So they were all very similar requests that were happening in the social movement. But I think on the creative level, it was very inspiring. There was so many new music that came out of that, and the work that came out that was inspired. And that, but on the outside, I think a lot of people would think, oh, it's a violent stuff that's happening. It's really sad. But on the inside, it's very, very different. I wish more people got to experience that in real time, in personal level. Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, I've taken a lot of your time, Sammy, and I really appreciate it. You're very generous and you're answering all my questions really well. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything I haven't asked about that you say, wow, I'd really like people to know this about my work or what I'm doing?
I think if I may to say anything concise, I would say that there's so much misunderstanding between different groups, culture, tribes, and leading to where we are today right now. And if I may share and offer anything, is to take a moment of pause, and a moment of suspension from judgment of each other, and just being open-minded to listen and without judging and jumping the gun about each other, and treat each other as individual, that we all have a different story coming to the today and here and now, and how do we inspire each other to be more optimistic and bring more joy and love to the world, and that's kind of what we would like to share in my company. And I'm sure, talking to you, we are all kind of doing that work together by taking the time and having this kind of conversation. So, and I'll just say thank you so much, Charlie, for inviting me to share some of my perspective, and then thank you for all the good work that y'all doing with the Vancouver. And I'm really looking forward to where it goes, and how kind of positive seeds we can bring to people and have those great ripple effect. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Sammy. It's been wonderful. I've been speaking to Sammy Chien. He's the co-founder and co-artistic director of Chimerik in Vancouver.